guys, I can't believe I'm back, but here I am after the Easter break that turned out to be more stressing and a little bit harmful than I thought it would be, but I'm fine. We are doing everything fine here at the house, so things are getting better. So today I have decided to do a combined review of one of my most intriguing or most authors that I feel that they are. Today I have decided to do a combined review of two books by Neil Gaiman. Neil Gaiman is a British author that I know I really like, but the beginning of our relationship wasn't that great. So I decided to give it another go, basically because he tweeted that the Anansi Boys BBC radio adaptation was about to expire in a month during January. So I decided to listen to it because I've heard that Anansi Boys is one of the more adventure, more comical books of his, and also one of my best friends really adores the book, so I decided to listen the adaptation, the radio dramatization of it. And I must say that I love it. I love how the rhythm was very well done. Not only the rhythm of the story, but the rhythm of every character development. It was like almost fluent as the plot it can be. And also I love the sound arranges, like with music, with African music, with this kind of tribe feel to it. And I think that atmosphere gave me a complete bubble kind of experience, where every time I was listening to this story, I was there living with Charlie, who is the main character, and his brother Spider. So to me, this kind of atmospheric adaptation was really good. I really like the BBC radio adaptation or dramatization of books. Actually, I feel like they are like precisely on the dot. They are precisely putting the effort to make you feel engaged with the story, but also carried away by it, and also leaving the story with the characters, which is really hard because of course you have the actors and you have the kind of sound team and all, but having this kind of atmospheric of being away from the place where you are actually listening the story and being transported to a fantasy world. That actually I feel like fantasy worlds are really hard to adapt to that experience, because I've heard I have the BBC adaptation of Jane Austen novels, like the radio adaptation. So it's cool to hear Benedict Cumberbatch playing one of the characters, but within all that's a realistic story. Or if you want to call it historical, call it historical, but there's no kind of eerie fantasy element that you are not able to explain through reason. So having magic on your own ears and trying to understand how the magic works, how the spells work, without being able to read about it, only having either the characters responding to the spell or responding to that situation, or the narrator, which was very brief, which is good, because I feel with adaptations, although the narrator is very necessary at the beginning, I feel like actually the characters are the ones that have to tell you the story, not having only a narrator like explaining everything and the characters just setting the dialogue up. To me, having magic explained or dramatized was very interesting. And this link, well, in case you don't know, Anansi Boys is actually the story of Charlie, a normal guy who has his own job in London, and also he has his own life. And one day he discovers that his father, who lives in a different setting, not in London, has died. So when he goes back to his origins, which I thought it was Africa, but I think it's the Caribbean actually. So when he goes to this kind of island where her father was born, he discovers apparently that he had a brother of his same age who was banished from his side, but he doesn't remember having a brother. So one day he wishes that he actually could meet his brother, and this man appears on his door saying, "Hi, I am a spider." This is a story about a family, about two brothers, two different brothers. One of them, actually a spider, has in his heritage, he has Anansi's powers, because Anansi, who is the father of these two men, was actually a god. So having this kind of familiar conflict mixed with mythology and magic, and without any kind of visual reference because you are only listening to it, I thought it was brilliantly done. I thought that you could understand them, if not the majority, you could understand the plot, you could understand the characters, and you could see the progression of all the characters throughout the whole story, which is very interesting to see because you don't have the narrator kind of telling you about the changes. You can feel it in their voices and how things get a little bit messy. And I love how magic is non-explained in this story. You have a spider who has quirk abilities that could resemble magic. So every time he does something weird, Charlie is the one that has to deal with that. But he's powerless, so he has to learn through interactions with other characters how to trick those magic elements and how to use words, normal kind of words, and not a spell, not anything like that, as his own weapon to defeat not his brother, because the relationship with his brothers and the problems with his brothers are different, but the villain in this story. And this leads me to the second book I read by Neil Gaiman, which was Norse Mythology. Norse Mythology, I've read the Spanish version, which was brilliantly translated. I must say that I haven't read any Norse Mythology before. I only have the knowledge of Norse Mythology that Marvel has set up when he introduced Thor and his whole family and his whole kind of Asgard kind of kingdom to the comics, and more precisely to the proper films, which are the ones that I watched. So to me, going to the roots of that, going to I think there are nine tales of Norse mythology, was very interesting because I wasn't sure if my Marvel kind of background, my Marvel films background, was going to be either an impediment to enjoy it or an advantage. I must say that I was expecting a different thing. I was expecting a story using the characters of Norse mythology, not a collection of tales. However, I feel like the collection of tales worked better than I thought, because not only it helped me to relate some moments in the movies that I've seen with real elements in the mythology itself that I wasn't aware. And I really like how, even though I only had this kind of cinematic kind of approach to the gods and the myths, I love how when Neil Gaiman wrote it, you could actually feel and see all the characters as you either imagine them because they weren't officially in the proper films because I didn't know them, or if they were like the main characters such as Thor or Loki. Loki's actually my favorite, so I was a little bit concerned about the portrayal. But having, for example, Loki explained and as a character as a main character, even in some of the tales, I could actually compare it to the Loki version that I am more aware of, which is the film version portrayed by Tom Hiddleston. So having that comparison between the characters was pretty good, because I thought that having a reduced space as you have with the short stories, such as this kind of collection of short stories, it's really difficult to find or to define the characters so much that at the end of the short story the reader is happy and fulfilled, because not only we completed a adventure, but we understood a facet of a character, or we understood a character completely, so we don't need more information, which is what normally happens to me when I read short stories. I feel like lacking of more, because I feel that the story is not complete. With this, I didn't have this feeling. Neil Gaiman has, in my opinion, a very precise prose, so whenever he uses an adjective within a sentence, you could actually picture in your head a whole situation. Exactly, for example, when they say you cannot trust Loki in the movies, now I understand why, because it's not a very relatable person and is not trustworthy. He's very convenient to his own will, to his own needs. So he will trick you with words, because it's his weapon among other stuff, to be the benefactor, to have the most profit out of it. And I knew that from the films, because, well, we know Loki has like a background, but in the stories I could see a more darker Loki than I thought I would get. Also, I thought that his character was not only meaner, but he had more of a childish kind of vibe to it. Like, I behave almost like a kind of child whenever I feel like it. If I want to be good, I'll be good. If I want to be naughty, I'll be naughty. I feel like in the case of Loki, because it's the example I'm using, you could in one story discover his meaner side, his darker side, and in another story, while being consumed by his own need of winning, of defeating the other gods, you could see him more fragile or more playful. It's very complete. I feel like Neil Gaiman managed to, in a really short space, draw you or make you imagine the whole story and the characters as if they were real. And I feel like that is really, really difficult to do. Of course, he has a trajectory already, so it's very normal that he has this kind of resources to make it easier. I also feel like now that I know the truth, I am able to see where Marvel decided to play around with some characters and facts. As factual, you can actually consider a myth, but it's really interesting to see now that I've read some of the myths, how Marvel changed some of these stories or some of these elements to be able to play with characters in a broader, darker sense. I am not going to spoil anyone, but it's something I'm thinking about, something or a couple of things that actually happened during the last Thor movie. I think Thor. Sorry, I'm always saying it wrong. Thor. Ragnarok. During Thor Ragnarok, there are two elements that were heavily changed because of screen and script needs, and I feel they were really well. But having the original myth in my hands, it was really interesting to see the reality and how they decided to change it. However, I feel like in these two books in particular, women are not as prominent and as powerful as they should be. I mean, in my opinion, I feel like in the case of the dramatization of Anansi Boys, the characters, although there's one in particular that was very active towards the beginning, the female characters were like more secondary because your attention, the focus, the spotlight was on the family problems and the tricks or the problems between the two brothers, between Spider and gosh, Spider and Charlie. I didn't remember Charlie's name. And also, I understand that women were not very well represented in myths because, as my very small knowledge of myths, I'm more acquainted with the Greek mythology or Greek stories. Women are usually not very well portrayed or not very prominent because, in my opinion, myths tend to be more centered or more focused on male characters, which is good, but I am very interested to see which book of Gaiman gives women a more broader, kind of freer sense of action. So I want to explore other stories where he brings you like stronger characters and see how that's approachable or not. So what do you think of the books I mentioned, and have you read any of those? I would love to hear your thoughts on the comment section. Well, read them, better said, on the comment section down below. And if you like this, of course, you can subscribe and join me. And if you're new, hi, my name is Clara, and I hope you had a really good time. Subscribe and click the notification button, the little bell over there, because you will have issues if you don't click there. Maybe YouTube doesn't notify you when I'm posting. So I hope you enjoyed this video and we will see each other next week. Goodbye!